What if everything you believe about women was designed to keep you weak? Ever wondered why the more genuine you are, the more they pull away? You show love. You offer loyalty. You're transparent. And somehow that's exactly when they lose interest. Why? It's because the truth, the real, raw, untamed truth, isn't romantic. It's unsettling. And philosophers like Arthur Schopenhauer knew it. He didn't sugarcoat reality. He exposed it. And when you combine his brutal honesty with the calm strength of Stoicism, something shifts inside you. You stop chasing. You stop doubting. You start seeing, this video is dangerous. Not because it attacks women, but because it wakes men up. Once you see what's hidden, you can't unsee it. And that clarity, it makes you powerful. It makes you untouchable. So if you're tired of being confused, hurt, or emotionally manipulated, don't just watch this video, study it. Like, subscribe, and stay till the end. Because this is the truth they never wanted you to find. Point 1. Secrets of the chase. Have you ever noticed how the one who wants less somehow holds more power? Think back. Maybe it was high school, college, or just a random Tuesday when you met her. The moment your eyes locked, something inside you stirred. She wasn't the most talkative, maybe not even the most beautiful, but there was something about her. A calm, a confidence, a mystery. And suddenly, you were chasing. Do you remember what that felt like? The excitement of each message she sent. The silent decoding of every emoji. The rush of seeing her name pop up on your phone. You weren't just attracted, you were hooked. But here's the strange part. It wasn't because she gave you everything. It was because she didn't. She left space. Space for your imagination. Space for you to wonder. And that space? That's the secret of the chase. Why is it that we chase what's slightly out of reach? Why do we fall hardest for the ones who don't quite fall back at least not right away? You see, desire is a dance. It's not born in certainty. It grows in the unknown. When someone gives us just enough to feel wanted, but not so much that we feel full, we lean in. We pursue, we crave. And the deeper the mystery, the stronger the pull. Now ask yourself, in your last relationship, were you chasing or were you the one being chased? Were you trying to prove your worth? Or were you living in such a way that your presence alone spoke louder than your words? There's something deeply masculine about restraint. About not over-explaining, not over-texting, not over-pursuing. Schopenhauer understood this. He saw how easily men fall into the illusion that affection is earned by effort. But women, he believed, are drawn not to men who beg, but to men who breathe differently, who hold stillness like a blade. And when you combine that with the wisdom of Stoicism, the lesson becomes clear. You don't chase love. You attract it through mastery of self. So many men lose themselves in the chase. They forget their path, their peace, their presence. They contort into what they think she wants, instead of standing as who they truly are. But let me ask you something. What if the less you chased, the more she would feel drawn to you? What if holding your ground created more magnetism than running toward her ever could? Think back again. The one who got away, was it because you chased too hard? Or gave too much too soon? This isn't about manipulation. It's about magnetism. And the truth is, you are most desirable when you no longer need to be desired. Let her wonder. Let her feel the weight of your silence. Let her ask herself if you're even interested. That is the real secret of the chase. Point 2. Schopenhauer's warning. Have you ever loved someone so deeply that you lost yourself in the process? At first it feels like magic, like the stars finally aligned. She laughs at your jokes, touches your arm when she talks, says your name in a way that makes your chest tighten. You feel seen, wanted, alive. And in that quiet rush of connection, you begin to give, and give, and give, until one day you look in the mirror and barely recognize the man staring back. This is what Schopenhauer tried to warn us about, not because he hated women, but because he saw with brutal clarity what happens when men fall in love without boundaries, when they mistake chemistry for character, when they hand over their strength in exchange for closeness. He wrote about love as a trick of nature, a biological illusion meant to continue the species, not to fulfill your soul. That sounds cold, doesn't it? But ask yourself, how many times have you ignored red flags because your heart was already invested? How many times did you know she wasn't right for you, but stayed anyway? Love, when blindly given, can become a kind of self-erasure. And Schopenhauer wasn't saying, don't love, he was saying, see clearly before you do. Ask the hard questions before you lose your footing. Does she respect you when you say no? Does she support your path or try to detour you from it? Can she sit with your silence or does she demand your constant attention? These questions matter, because love that demands your soul as payment isn't love. It's worship. And a man who worships a woman will eventually lose her. Why? Because she didn't want a worshiper. She wanted a mirror of strength, someone to respect, someone who doesn't crumble under the weight of her beauty or moods. When was the last time you looked at a woman and thought, she's incredible, but is she good for me? We don't ask that enough. We're taught to prove ourselves, to win her, to keep her happy. But what about your happiness? Your mission? Your mind? Schopenhauer saw what happens. When men place women on pedestals, they get smaller in the process. Stoicism echoes this too. Never let your peace depend on something you can't control, and no matter how much you love her, you can't control her. So hold fast to who you are. Let love be something that meets you on your path, not something that pulls you off it. And the next time you find yourself falling fast, stop, breathe, remember the warning. Because the man who forgets himself in love eventually gets forgotten too. Point 3, emotions versus power. Have you ever sat alone after an argument, heart racing, hands shaking, and thought to yourself, why did I let that get to me so deeply? Maybe she pulled away without warning. Maybe she said something sharp and walked off like it meant nothing. And you stood there, absorbing every word like a knife to the chest. You felt powerless, not because of what she said, but because of what it awakened inside you. That aching need for validation, that quiet desperation to fix something, to be enough again. But here's the thing no one ever teaches us: the more control someone has over your emotions, the less control you have over your own life. Schopenhauer saw this clearly. He believed that emotions, especially when tied to love or lust, were nature's way of enslaving the mind. And when men become emotionally entangled without clarity, without grounding, they are no longer men. They are leaves in the wind, tossed by every shift in her mood, every glance, every silence. Now let me ask you, have you ever overreacted to something small? Not because it mattered, but because you felt invisible? Have you ever begged for love not with words, but with over-explaining, over-texting, over-giving? That's not love. That's emotional dependence. And yet we all do it. Why? Because somewhere along the way, we were taught that emotional vulnerability is strength. But vulnerability without boundaries? That's how men lose their power. Now don't mistake me. Feeling is not the enemy. Suppression is not the answer. But Stoicism teaches us to feel without becoming enslaved, to experience the waves of emotion without drowning in them. Imagine this. You're in a stormy sea. The waves are your emotions, chaotic, unpredictable. But your power? That's the anchor. That's the inner stillness that keeps you from being swept away. Most men never find that anchor. They live reaction to reaction, woman to woman, heartbreak to heartbreak, never realizing that true strength isn't found in control over her, but in control over themselves. So let me ask you again, who controls your emotional world? Is it her silence? Her praise? Her withdrawal? Or is it you? Calm, centered, unmoved even in the face of disappointment? Because the man who can stand in fire and not flinch, that man is rare. That man is respected. That man becomes magnetic not through effort but through stillness. Schopenhauer's warning wasn't to avoid emotion. It was to avoid serving it. And Stoicism, it gives you the sword to cut through illusion and hold the line of your peace. So next time your heart starts to spiral, pause, breathe, ask yourself, is this emotion serving me or ruling me? Because that single question can change everything. Point 4, real attraction decoded. Let me ask you something deeply personal. Have you ever looked back on someone you once loved and wondered, what exactly was I drawn to? It wasn't just the way she looked. Sure, her smile made your chest flutter. Her presence made time slow down. But the real hook, the invisible thread that pulled you in, was something harder to explain. A feeling, a force, something magnetic. That right there is the mystery of attraction, and it's so often misunderstood. You see, most men believe attraction is logical. If I'm nice, respectful, consistent, she'll love me. But how many times have you done everything right and still watched her drift away? It hurts, doesn't it? But here's what Schopenhauer hinted at and what Stoicism helps us understand more clearly. Real attraction isn't created through effort. It's awakened through energy. Not just any energy, your inner state. Your calm, your confidence, your indifference to chaos. Think about the people who've pulled you in effortlessly. They weren't begging for your approval. They weren't over-invested in your reaction. They just were, present, rooted, self-assured, and that presence felt like gravity. Now flip the mirror. What energy do you bring into your relationships? Is it neediness, tension, fear of losing her? Or is it wholeness, clarity, and the quiet power of a man who does not chase? There's a reason we're drawn to mystery. Predictability doesn't ignite passion, uncertainty does. And the paradox is this: the more you try to make her want you, the less she does. Why? Because effort signals imbalance, and in attraction, balance is everything. Have you ever had a woman who was wildly into you, but only when you weren't trying? Maybe you were busy with your life. Maybe you were emotionally unavailable. Not out of cruelty, but because you were focused. And suddenly, she was chasing, calling, wondering what you were thinking. That's not an accident. That's nature. And that's where Stoicism comes in. A Stoic man doesn't play games, but he doesn't lose himself either. He understands that attraction is born in how you carry yourself, not what you carry for her. He lives by principle, not pressure. And when you embody that, people feel it. Women feel it. You become the mountain, not the storm. So here's a final question. Are you showing up in your love life as a mirror of her desires, or as a man so rooted in purpose that desire flows to you? Because when a man learns to stop performing and starts being, when he no longer asks, "How do I get her to like me?" and instead lives in a way he likes himself, that's when real attraction begins. Let her feel the weight of your silence, the strength in your presence, the calm in your eyes. That's not a tactic. That's truth. That's power. That's real attraction decoded. Point 5, detachment, flower, desire. Have you ever noticed how the moment you stop caring, they suddenly care more? It's strange, isn't it? 1 week you're texting, checking your phone every hour, analyzing every reply. And she's distant, vague, cold. But the moment you stop chasing, when you pull back and start focusing on yourself, she reappears. Like clockwork. Why does that happen? It's not a coincidence. It's not manipulation. It's a psychological law. And it's something Schopenhauer understood well. Even centuries ago, he warned that desire is not born in having, but in lacking. That what we already hold no longer pulls at us, but what's slipping away suddenly becomes everything. Now think about your own life. How many times have you desired someone more just because they became unavailable? How often has silence made you feel urgency? That's the power of detachment. You see, most men confuse detachment with disinterest, but they're not the same. Disinterest is cold. It shuts off connection. But detachment? That's self-possession. It's calm. It's rooted. It says, I care, but I don't need. And that energy is magnetic. Stoicism teaches us this. Never place your peace in the hands of someone else. Because the moment you do, you become their servant, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. But the man who is detached, he's free. Not because he's heartless, but because he's whole. Let me tell you a story. There was once a man who loved deeply, gave everything, wrote poems, made late-night calls, planned surprises. He poured himself into her. But the more he gave, the more she withdrew. It broke him. And then one day, without drama, he stopped. Not out of anger, but exhaustion. He got quiet, focused on himself, went to the gym, traveled, built his business. He detached, not from her, but from the need for her. And that's when the phone buzzed. Hey, are you okay? She wrote. Funny how that works, isn't it? Detachment ignites curiosity. Curiosity stirs desire, because what's uncertain is always more interesting. Let me ask you this. What would happen if just for a moment you stopped trying to win her? What if you trusted that your value speaks louder than your effort? You might be surprised how many women start to notice. Not because you chased them, but because you didn't. Because here's the truth, the less you need, the more you attract. So next time you feel that pull, the anxiety, the temptation to overgive, pause, breathe, pull back. Not to punish her, but to return to yourself. To remind her and yourself that your value isn't in pursuit, it's in presence. And that's why detachment doesn't kill desire, it creates it. Point 6, the illusion of love. Have you ever been so deep in love that you didn't realize you were actually drowning? At first, everything feels right. Her laughter becomes the soundtrack to your days. Her touch feels like home. You start imagining the future, shared apartments, quiet mornings, matching mugs. And then slowly, silently, you start disappearing. You stop seeing your friends as much. You pause your goals, your routines. You mold yourself to fit her world, to keep her close, to not mess things up. But one day you wake up, and the version of you in the mirror isn't the man you once knew. That's the illusion of love, and Schopenhauer saw it with brutal clarity. He believed that romantic love was not a noble connection of souls, but a clever trick by nature, a biological trap to ensure reproduction, not happiness. Love, he said, isn't what it seems. It feels like destiny, but it's often just chemistry wrapped in fantasy. Think back. Have you ever loved someone so much that you ignored every red flag, every gut feeling telling you this isn't right? Have you ever mistaken obsession for affection? That's not because you were weak. It's because love, at least the kind that burns hot and fast, is not always based in reality. It's based in projection. We don't fall in love with people. We fall in love with what we want them to be. And that's dangerous. Because when the illusion fades, when the mask slips and the flaws appear, we don't just grieve the person. We grieve the dream we attach to them. Stoicism warns us about this. It teaches us not to tie our peace to external things, especially not people we can't control. The Stoic man knows that real love doesn't blind. It clarifies. It doesn't consume. It complements. It doesn't make you forget yourself. It makes you more of yourself. So let me ask you, are you in love with her? Or the version of her you created in your mind? Are you holding on to a real connection? Or the fear of being alone? Because here's the truth no one tells you. Real love is calm. Real love is quiet. Real love doesn't demand that you lose yourself to feel worthy. And if you've ever walked away from someone you still loved, because staying meant abandoning yourself, then you already know the difference between illusion and truth. Schopenhauer's warning wasn't to make you cynical. It was to wake you up, to help you see clearly, because the man who sees through the illusion becomes impossible to manipulate, and the man who chooses himself, even when it hurts, he becomes powerful beyond measure. So the next time you fall with your eyes open, not into fantasy, but into something real. Point 7, presence over pursuit. Let me ask you something you may have never considered. Have you ever noticed how a man who simply is often attracts more than a man who constantly chases? You've seen it. The guy who doesn't try too hard, who walks into a room and doesn't need to speak loudly. His presence speaks for him. He doesn't push for attention. He commands it without saying a word. And women, they notice. They lean in. They wonder. Why? Because there's something irresistible about a man at ease with himself. A man who doesn't perform. A man who shows up fully, but never chases. You see, most men are taught to pursue, to do, to prove, to chase. Movies romanticize it. Music celebrates it. Society rewards it. But here's the paradox. The more you chase, the more you subtly say, I am not enough. Schopenhauer understood this deeply. To him, love built on constant pursuit was a kind of desperation, one that strips a man of his dignity. The more he gave up his time, his purpose, his peace, the less attractive he became. But presence? That's different. Presence is silent power. It's when a man knows who he is, where he's going, and refuses to abandon that direction, even for love. He listens more than he speaks. He feels no pressure to impress. He lets the world come to him. Have you ever had a woman lean into you not because you chased, but because you paused? Because you looked her in the eye and didn't flinch? Because you let the silence sit instead of filling it with anxious noise? That is presence, and presence is more seductive than any pickup line, any grand gesture, any carefully crafted message, because it speaks one message loud and clear. I'm whole. I want you, but I do not need you to complete me. Stoicism teaches us this too. The Stoic man is present not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. He doesn't live in the past or fear the future. He shows up in this moment, grounded, aware, alive. And because he isn't chasing, he radiates something rare, certainty. So here's the question I want you to reflect on. Are you chasing connection out of fear? Or are you standing firm in your own presence, letting the right people feel you without needing to pursue them? Because chasing may catch attention, but presence builds attraction. And the man who is present, who listens deeply, speaks intentionally, and never moves faster than his spirit allows, that man doesn't run after love. Love walks toward him. So stop chasing, breathe, be here, Because the moment you trade performance for presence, you stop begging to be chosen and start becoming unforgettable. Point 8. Why they're afraid of you waking up. Let me ask you something quietly powerful. What if the version of you that sees through everything is the version they fear the most? Not fear in the way of being scared of harm. No, this is deeper. It's the fear of losing control. The fear of no longer being able to manipulate you through praise, silence, affection, or withdrawal. Because once you wake up, once you truly wake up, you stop being easy to move. And that's terrifying to anyone who thrives on your confusion. See, most people don't want you grounded. They don't want you still. They want you emotionally invested, reactive, unsure. Because a man who's unsure is easier to guide. A man still chasing answers outside of himself can be pulled into games, into patterns, into cycles he doesn't even realize he's repeating. Schopenhauer spoke of this sleep. This spell men fall under when desire clouds clarity. He warned that love, unchecked by reason, becomes enslavement. And it's true. How many times have you known something wasn't right but stayed anyway, because your heart hoped it would change? How often have you silenced your gut just to avoid being alone? That sleep is comfort. But awakening, that's confrontation. It's painful, it's lonely, but it's also freedom. Now imagine this. You begin to say less. You observe more. You stop reacting instantly. You stop needing answers. You let people reveal themselves. And when they try to bait you emotionally, you remain still, not because you're cold, but because you finally understand the value of your peace. And suddenly the people who once controlled your heart grow uneasy. They can't shake you anymore. They can't guilt you. They can't lure you back into old stories. Because you've woken up. And that awakening? It's not just personal. It's spiritual. It's the quiet rebellion of a man reclaiming his power, not through violence, but through vision. Stoicism calls this ataraxia, unshakable inner calm. When you reach that state, people don't know what to do with you. They can't manipulate someone who doesn't need anything from them. They can't dominate a man who has nothing to prove. So I ask you, are you still seeking approval from someone who benefits from your sleep? Are you still bending to emotions that were never yours to carry? Because once you begin to wake up, once you question, once you detach, once you see, you become immune to the game. And here's the irony. The moment you no longer chase their love is the moment they fear losing yours. Wake up, see things as they are, not as you wish them to be. Stand still in the storm, and watch how quickly the illusion collapses. They were never afraid of you failing. They were afraid of you realizing you never needed them in the first place. Final thoughts. The Stoic man shall never forget. Let me ask you this. Have you ever been haunted by someone you couldn't fully explain? Not because they hurt you, not because they chased you, but because they left a mark, simply by being exactly who they were. Now flip the question. What if you were that man? Not the man who sent flowers every week, not the one who over-explained his love or begged to stay, but the one who walked through her life like a quiet storm, calm, present, grounded, the man who didn't ask to be remembered, and yet couldn't be forgotten. That is the Stoic man. He's not flashy. He doesn't need to prove himself. He listens more than he speaks, and when he does speak, it lands. Not because it's loud, but because it's real. He doesn't seduce with promises. He seduces with presence, with stillness, with the feeling that he could leave at any moment, but chooses to stay. Women never forget that kind of man. Why? Because he's rare. You see, in a world full of noise, he is silence. In a world of performance, he is authenticity. In a world where everyone is desperate to be liked, he is unbothered, complete, and at peace. Schopenhauer understood. Something chilling but true. Many men exist as shadows of who they could be, lost in the pursuit of love, approval, and fleeting happiness. But the Stoic man, he builds himself first. Not out of ego, but out of reverence for his own soul. He doesn't abandon himself to be loved. He invites others to meet him where he already stands. So ask yourself, are you shaping your life to be desired? Or are you becoming the kind of man who desires nothing but truth? Because that's what she remembers. She doesn't remember the man who begged. She remembers the man who could have had anyone, but chose himself first. She remembers how calm he was when she tried to stir him, how kind he was when she tried to hurt him, how still he stood when everything else felt unstable. She remembers the man who made her feel seen, not because he chased her, but because he saw through her. That kind of man lives in her memory, even after years pass. You don't need money, muscles, or charm for that. You need mastery, emotional control, inner strength, quiet conviction. And above all, you need to stop being afraid of being alone, because once you become the man who can walk away with grace, who chooses peace over approval, you become unforgettable. Not because you tried to be, but because you didn't have to. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real lesson here. You don't have to chase. You don't have to prove. You only have to remember who you are, and never trade that for temporary love, fleeting attention, or emotional games. Because the Stoic man, the grounded, silent, unshakable one, isn't trying to be unforgettable. He just is. So if something in this video stirred something in you, if you saw a glimpse of yourself, or the man you're becoming, then that's not by accident. That's a sign. A reminder that your value doesn't come from being chosen, it comes from choosing yourself. Thank you truly for spending this time with me. It means more than you know. You're not just a viewer, you're part of something deeper here. A quiet brotherhood of men who are choosing strength over neediness, presence over pursuit, truth over illusion. If this resonated with you, I'd love for you to stick around. Tap subscribe, maybe hit the like button. It helps more men find this message. And more importantly, it keeps this conversation going. Drop a comment if anything in this video hit home. Share your story, your thoughts, your journey. I read every single one. You never know who might feel a little less alone because of your words. With that said, thanks for watching. And until next time,